In the early 20th century, two competing railroads chiseled and blasted their way into Central Oregon through the Deschutes River Canyon, in what turned out to be the last great railroad war in America. What they built still finds purpose in the 21st century. From the mighty Columbia River at Wishram, Washington, to the high desert community of Bend, Oregon, today's BNSF Railway continues the tradition of keeping the freight moving. Join us on an exciting trip over the Oregon Trunk subdivision from the high desert of Central Oregon to the scenic Columbia River Gorge. Along the way, you will see trains sprinting through forests of lodgepole pine, crossing high bridges and trestles at breathtaking locations like the Crooked River Gorge, rolling through an ancient lava flow near Bend, and snaking through the scenic Deschutes River Canyon. Union Pacific detour trains work into the mix off of the nearby Cascade Line after a massive mudslide devastated the railroad in 2008. In addition to the original footage of this 2008 release, we will include a few updated scenes, like this remote part of the Deschutes River Canyon near Kaskela, shot in 2020. SP Daylight number 4449 is also featured, pulling a special between Wishram and Bend in 2017. Get ready as 7 Idea Productions presents BNSF Railway's Oregon Trunk Subdivision. The Oregon Trunk Subdivision covers 220 miles between a junction with the former Southern Pacific Main Line at Chemult, Oregon, and the Spokane, Portland, and Seattle Main Line at Fallbridge Junction, milepost 0.2 on the timetable. The crew change point and Central Oregon town of Bend appears at milepost 152. The line south of Bend was added later by the Great Northern, and mileposts were reset to 0. Today they are designated with a Z. Bend is 0.0Z, and Chemult is 67.8Z. At 4,770 feet above sea level, Chemult marks the highest point on the Oregon Trunk. We are at the south switch of Chemult, milepost 502.25 on Union Pacific's Cascade Subdivision. A Barstow to Vancouver train approaches on this crisp winter's morning. This incredible power lash-up with pre-merger colors was becoming a rarity when we captured this scene. The bar valve is traveling at restricted speed as it enters the siding and diverges onto the Oregon Trunk Junction. This is January of 2008, and a series of strong winter storms have dumped several feet of snow in the Oregon Cascades. The extra moisture triggered a massive mudslide on Union Pacific's Cascade sub northwest of here at Fraser, shutting down the line for several months. The only UP trains running north of this location were work trains like this one at Crescent Lake. The Oregon Trunk Subdivision is part of BNSF's Inside Gateway, competing with UP's I-5 corridor traffic, running north and south through California, Oregon, and Washington. At Chemult, a signal bridge stands over Oregon Trunk Junction. A propane-fired switch heater has been working overtime, keeping the switch points clear of ice and snow. Standing on a snowdrift, we can see the UP's Cascade sub continuing off to the left, while the BNSF line splits off to the right, heading north to Bend. An old Southern Pacific Maintenance of Way building stands out against the snow on this Arctic morning. Looking to the south, we find a UP Z train approaching. Instead of blasting by at track speed, today, the ZLCBR, a daily high-priority Los Angeles to Portland piggyback train, is diverging onto the BNSF for a trip up the Oregon Trunk. When it reaches the Columbia River, it'll hang a left and head west toward Portland. As the train passes our location, the 200-ton locomotives shake the ground. This was one of around 5 daily trains Union Pacific detoured each way on the Oregon Trunk. After leaving Chemult, the grade drops at a rate of around 1% at its maximum, tapering off near the siding of Rosedale, formerly known as Crescent. Maximum track speed from here to Bend is 49 miles per hour. The original Oregon Trunk Railway ran from Fallbridge to Bend. Great Northern completed this segment of track after the Southern Pacific finished the Cascade Line in 1926. Around 30 miles to the north, between the sidings of Rosedale and Beale, we catch another Union Pacific reroute. This time it's a southbound manifest on its way to Roseville, California. The extra traffic on the line was good news for rail fans, as BNSF traffic usually consists of only 3 trains per day in each direction. Set up near the Highway 31 road crossing, an Everett, Washington to Barstow, California train passes in the late afternoon sun. This portion of the Oregon Trunk Sub is dark territory, meaning there are no signals governing train movements. Trains receive authority via track warrant control from the Oregon Trunk Sub dispatcher to a specified milepost. This train has clearance to CTC limits at Chemult. From there, the crew must get a signal from Union Pacific's dispatcher in Omaha to enter the Cascade Sub for a trip to BNSF's yard in Klamath Falls. In dark territory, trains carrying materials that pose an inhalation hazard must be preceded by a high rail truck. This is to make sure the track is clear and all switches are lined properly ahead of the train. A high rail truck passes our location just north of the siding at Beale, formerly known as Lapine. Right behind it is train MRRB PAS, a Riverbank, California to Pasco, Washington freight. A safe distance behind the locomotives are a few tank cars filled with anhydrous ammonia, often used to make fertilizer. North of Lapine, a few of the Cascade Mountain peaks come into view. Prominently featured is Mount Bachelor, a popular ski destination. Just behind it, two of the Three Sisters are visible. They make a great backdrop for a northbound Barstow to Vancouver, Washington train. It is symboled the MBAR-VAW. The Cascade Mountains are hidden under stormy skies as a southbound pass bar approaches Vandervoort Road. Milepost 12.8Z marks the sighting of lava, and we can guess what inspired the name. Measuring 8,725 feet, lava is the longest sighting on the Oregon trunk. BNSF 4984 leads a Vancouver to Riverbank train south on a warm July morning. The north switch of lava is located at the edge of the lava flow. The main line disappears into a seemingly lifeless mass of volcanic rock caused by an eruption thousands of years ago. At nearly 5 miles long and 3 miles wide, the lava flow covers over 6,000 acres or 9 square miles. It could be described as hell with the fires out, yet heat waves do their eerie dance over the endless mass of jagged rock. At the southeast corner stands Lava Butte, a 500-foot-tall cinder cone. In the 1930s, the U.S. Forest Service built a spiral road to the top to serve as a lookout point, giving visitors a spectacular view of the lava flow, as well as the Oregon Cascades. Another Vancouver to Riverbank train approaches in the shimmering heat as it crests a 1.35% grade out of Bend. Within the hour, BNSF 5212 South heads through lava with a short HEVE BAR. Bend marks a crew change point on the BNSF. Originally called Farewell Bend, it was a location where many pioneers forded the Deschutes River. It became a city in 1905, and today Bend boasts a population of nearly 78,000 people. The same Vancouver to Riverbank train slows to a stop for a crew change at Bend Yard. The third unit is a Norfolk Southern -9 40CW, a 4,000 horsepower diesel built by GE in 1999. A Jordan spreader is parked nearby. It is used for plowing snow in the wintertime. We imagine it saw a lot of use in the winter of 2008. Fast forwarding 9 years to June of 2017, SP Daylight number 4449 arrives in Bend, pulling a special out of Portland. The train would lay over for the night and return the following morning. Returning to the spring of 2008, we are at Deschutes, milepost 143.3. A northbound BNSF is in the 6,336-foot siding and has been split in two to clear a crossing as it awaits two southbound trains. The first is a UP reroute bound for Roseville. The second is an Everett to Barstow train running 3x2. Near milepost 132 is Prineville Junction. Here, the City of Prineville Railroad interchanges cars with the BNSF. An ex-Milwaukee Road GP9 number 985 is in charge of the Crooked River Dinner train today. The engine was built in 1954 as the Chicago-Milwaukee-St. Paul and Pacific number 2406. Passengers have boarded the train and are preparing for a Sunday afternoon excursion to Prineville. Our attention returns to the BNSF main line as BNSF 7672 leads its train south on the jointed rail. At Terrebonne, we find a historic depot which was constructed in 1911 for the Oregon Trunk Railway. The depot was recently restored and now houses a restaurant with a great view of the main line and an Everett to Barstow train. A UP diesel has somehow made it onto this train. UP 6080 is an AC 44CW CTE. At the time, ACs were pretty rare on this line, as BNSF preferred the DC-powered -9 44CW. On a warm evening in June, SP 4449 races through Terrebonne. North of Terrebonne lies a major obstacle for the railroad, the Crooked River Canyon. To cross the canyon, the Oregon Trunk Railway built a 460-foot-long two-hinge arch-span bridge. Towering 320 feet over the river, it was the second highest bridge in the U.S. when it was completed in 1911. From the west side, we watch as a southbound UP train crosses over. When UP crews were getting qualified to run this line during the reroutes, the sudden high crossing of the deep canyon was quite a shock, especially if BNSF crews saved it as a little surprise for their Uncle Pete brothers. From the old Highway 97 bridge, we view the Crooked River below. The sheer walls of the canyon are not for the faint of heart. The first train that crossed this bridge on September 17, 1911, did so with only half of the bridge's rivets in place. They are all accounted for now. Two competing railroads built into Central Oregon via the Deschutes River Canyon. The Deschutes Railroad, under the Oregon Railway and Navigation Company, backed by Union Pacific's Edward Harriman, and the Oregon Trunk Railway, under James J. Hill, who had control of the Great Northern and Northern Pacific, through which came the Spokane, Portland, and Seattle. The fierce competition through here between Harriman and Hill became known as the last Great Railroad War in the U.S. Today's Oregon Trunk subdivision is a compilation of both lines. Just west of the community of Madras, a Union Pacific reroute crosses the Willow Creek Bridge, which just happens to be Harriman's old Union Pacific line. The old Oregon Trunk grade built by Hill went through the canyon and was later abandoned in 1923. The Willow Creek Bridge is 275 feet tall and breaks the tape measure at 1,050 feet. Several loads of lumber from the Pacific Northwest are on their way to California and beyond. It's the 23rd day of May, 2008, and cold spring showers greet us at North Madras. BNSF 7589 leads a Riverbank to Pasco train along another section of jointed rail, something that is disappearing from the Oregon Trunk Sub. As the train disappears under Highway 26, we move our camera to the other side to catch a southbound Everett to Barstow train as it makes its way through the rainy afternoon. GE-9 44CWs are king on the trunk, and this train is no exception, with two painted in BNSF's Heritage 2 scheme and a former Santa Fe war bonnet, number 636. Unlike the line between Chemult and Bend, the remainder of the Oregon Trunk subdivision is guarded by automatic block signals. Trains still operate via track warn control. The double stacks on this train are empty garbage containers bound for Klamath Falls. They will be filled and sent back north to the Roosevelt landfill in Washington State. Another -9 and a -840CW bring up the rear by remote control. One of the reasons southbound trains often use DP power here is a grade that averages around 1.5% for the next 16 miles. At Paxton, we watch an Everett to Barstow train with distributed power battle the grade at milepost 99 as it climbs the hill out of Gateway. If you could sum up the view of eastern Oregon with one image, this is fairly close. Mountains, canyons, sagebrush, and juniper, rangeland for growing cattle, a few alfalfa farms, and the Oregon trunk line. It's just right over there. Down below is the community of Gateway. Gateway is located at milepost 93.5. It has a short siding of just over 1,700 feet. BNSF 7589 eases down grade in dynamics. The extra engines in its consist are most likely headed north to handle an imbalance of power. Southbound trains are usually heavier and require more power than northbounds. At North Gateway, new signal heads are waiting to be cut in, replacing the classic searchlight signals that have guarded this line for decades. An Everett to Barstow train has just exited nearby Tunnel 5 and climbs the grade. We had taped this train the day before crossing the Columbia River. However, one of its engines had brake issues, and the train spent most of the night in the canyon. An additional unit from another train was added to the point, and now the crippled HEVE-BAR is finally on its way to Bend for a crew change. As the railroad heads deeper into the canyon, the grade passes over a fill at the Trout Creek Ranch. BNSF 7589 continues its descent. From a higher vantage point, we can see farther into Trout Creek Canyon. From South Junction, just north of here at milepost 85.3, to Culver, milepost 114.5, the original Deschutes, or UP line, is used. Our old friend, the Vancouver to Riverbank train, is seen one final time climbing the grade carved into the canyon above Trout Creek. The striking landscape is a taste of things to come. Trout Creek Ranch is a classic picture of the American West. Among the mesas and valleys, one can get lost in time. A sense of the old frontier days still lingers around this homestead, now abandoned among the tall sagebrush. It is near this place that Trout Creek meets the Deschutes River. The scene has changed little from the first time settlers arrived. Cattle lazily work their way up an old cat road above the BNSF main line as they graze on summer range. Nearby stands the Trout Creek Viaduct, stretching 550 feet across the canyon. Rail fanning the Oregon trunk requires a little extra patience. We came in here knowing a southbound had just crossed the Columbia and was heading our direction. What we didn't expect was that it would be 8 hours before the train got here. You're welcome. We didn't wait quite as long for 4449 to cross here in June of 2017, which was good since it was nearly 100 degrees in the canyon. From atop a mesa, we can see where the Warm Springs River meets the Deschutes. This is known as South Junction. The land on the far side of the river is part of the Warm Springs Indian Reservation. When railroad construction was underway in 1910, an agreement was made between the Oregon Trunk Railway, building on the west bank, and the Deschutes Railroad, building on the east, to use the same track. This was because the Warm Springs Indians refused to let the railroad build on their land. So, 10.4 miles of the Deschutes Railroad grade was shared between here and, simply enough, a place known as North Junction. The river is a popular destination for both fishermen and rafters. Many people take advantage of the great river access afforded at several locations. There are several campsites along this scenic river. And they can be a great place to view trains like this Everett to Barstow. The head end is now making its way past the 5,386-foot siding of South Junction. Two radio-controlled DPs continue to shove as the grade begins to increase slightly. In early October of 2020, we camped on the far side of the river near the siding of Kaskela. The day is almost spent as BNSF 5065 South rumbles out of a canyon and across irrigated alfalfa fields on a cattle ranch nestled along the river. The train continues its course towards South Junction and away from our camp among the juniper and sagebrush as the day draws to a close. The next morning, another southbound breaks the silence as it works its way out of the shadows of the canyon near milepost 79. To the left of the curve, you can see evidence of an older alignment, plainly visible from our aerial camera platform. Technology not available to us back in 2008. Most of the vegetation is brown and dry this time of year, and haze from wildfires filters the morning sun. Yet there still is beauty to be found in the Deschutes River country. Another southbound winds through the canyon toward us after passing through Tunnel 4 near North Junction. By looking at the train's consist of mostly grain hoppers and tanks, we conclude this must be a pass bar, a Pasco to Barstow train. There have been some changes since our first visit in 2008. The line has since been upgraded to centralized traffic control and the new digital technology of positive train control implemented between Lava and a point south of the Columbia River. Much of the jointed rail has given way to ribbon rail as the line begins handling longer and heavier trains. The scenery is still the same, and that's just fine with us. The train is traveling along a stretch of river known as White Horse Rapids. The only northbound we saw during our 2020 excursion was this Officer Special, made up of 2 business cars led by BNSF 7250 and the UP 5601. An interesting pairing of the descendants of the opposing sides of the Great Railroad War. The Officer's Special disappears behind a large rock before entering Tunnel 4 at mile marker 75.4. Here is a view of the tunnel. And if we point our camera to the north, we can see North Junction. This is where joint trackage ended and the Oregon trunk line returned to the west bank of the river. It is the railroad grade that is still used today. Let's continue north and go back to the year 2008. Climbing out of the canyon for a moment, we behold the grand features of Mount Hood, Oregon's tallest volcano. The summit reaches 11,235 feet above sea level, towering above the numerous wheat farms east of the Cascades. A grand view lost to those who are in the Deschutes River Canyon. South of the community of Maupin is a section of river known as Boxcar Rapids. Spring has come to the canyon, and we take in the wildflowers, adding some color to the scene. Trains aren't the only attraction here. Near Maupin, a Vancouver to Riverbank train sits on the main at Cambrai as it awaits for a northbound Union Pacific Z train. It's the 4th of April, 2008. Like the train we saw at Chemult, this is the ZLCBR, a Los Angeles to Portland piggyback train that has been rerouted onto the Oregon trunk due to the massive landslide at Fraser on the Cascade Line. It enters the siding at restricted speed. With the UP now in the clear, the BNSF conductor has permission to take the south switch and line it for the main. Cambrai is a 4,526-foot siding just south of Maupin. UP 5334 heads south following the river up the canyon. We enjoyed chasing this train as there weren't very many C40-8s working for Uncle Pete anymore. Maupin is located at milepost 54. It has a population of just over 400 people. A short 1,280-foot siding exists near a grain elevator, which BNSF uses for spotting maintenance of way equipment. A perk for the residents of this small town is the view of the river. In the late afternoon, a northbound Barstow to Pasco train rolls through Maupin and into the gathering shadows. Check out the cabless GP60B behind the lead engine. The loads of wood products seen near the head end were picked up in Klamath Falls and are bound for points east. Another day of rail fanning comes to an end in the Deschutes River Canyon. But there is still more to see as we continue northward to the Columbia River. Farther downstream from Maupin, another Everett to Barstow train crosses the White River, full with snowmelt from Mount Hood. Near Horseshoe Bend, a Barstow to Vancouver train works its way north to Oakbrook, where it will meet a UP detour train. Moving just around the curve, we catch up with the UPZ train we saw at Cambrai. It is powered by 3 EMD SD70Ms. The train passes giant faces, seemingly carved in the basalt rock walls of the canyon. North of Horseshoe Bend, a southbound snakes around an S-curve. Horseshoe Bend was the site of one of many battles between the Oregon Trunk and the Deschutes railroads. Shots were fired here, although there were no reports of injuries. The real battles happened in court. In the end, the Oregon Trunk won out and shared the line with the Deschutes. At Horseshoe Bend, the train crosses the river and plunges into Tunnel 2. This is also known as Twin Bridges, as the railroad crosses the river at each end of the tunnel. North of Oakbrook, a southbound BNSF heads toward Maupin. We have been filming trains from the Deschutes River Road. This was actually the old UP grade, which was abandoned in 1935. The canyon offers countless photographic opportunities. We have moved just around the bend at a place near Rattlesnake Canyon. We have included multiple run-bys of several trains in this video, and this was due to the light train count and the need to shoot multiple locations in a limited amount of time. Waiting up to 8 hours for a train can make you glad to catch anything. The train slows for a meet at Oakbrook. Near Max Canyon, the southbound Everett to Barstow is again seen as it rolls between Dyke and Cinnamox. The thunder of big GE power resonates through the canyon. As the train approaches Cinemax near milepost 30, we head the other direction, toward the mouth of the river. A new signal guards the north switch at Moody, the last siding we will encounter before reaching the Columbia River. This is milepost 4.9. The Everett to Barstow we last saw at Gateway climbs the 0.6% grade entering the Deschutes River Canyon. As we mentioned earlier, this train wasn't going to get very far today. It would be plagued by brake problems, making for a long night for the unfortunate crew. The mighty Columbia River is the largest river in the Pacific Northwest. It flows from British Columbia, Canada, through the state of Washington, carving the north boundary of Oregon before emptying into the Pacific. Through 14 hydroelectric dams, the Columbia is the largest power-producing river in North America. River barges make their way up and down the Columbia, servicing inland ports. The almost constant breeze in the gorge makes it popular for windsurfing. At Celilo, the Columbia River Drawbridge stretches 4,197 feet across the river, taking trains from Oregon into Washington. Also called the Oregon Trunk Bridge, it was originally built as a swing bridge, then converted to a drawbridge in 1957, when the nearby Dalles Dam was completed. The north end splits into a Y, known as Fallbridge Junction, where it connects to the old Spokane, Portland, and Seattle line. The drawbridge remains lifted until a train is ready to cross, giving river traffic the right-of-way. The down arrow remains lit, but will flash before the drawbridge is lowered. A tidewater barge approaches as it heads upstream with a load of overseas containers, fuel, and empty grain containers. The tug Challenger is in charge and lends its 3,000 horsepower to the effort. Founded in 1932, the Tidewater Barge Line is headquartered in Vancouver, Washington, and operates a 465-mile stretch of the Columbia and Snake Rivers between the inland port of Lewiston, Idaho, and the Pacific coast at Astoria, Oregon. Barges usually measure around 200 feet in length and 35 feet wide. They can handle up to 1,500 tons of cargo. We watch as the crew of the Challenger navigate the heavy tow upriver. We are waiting for an Everett to Barstow train, which is due any time to cross the bridge into Oregon and begin its journey down the trunk. On the Washington side, a westbound garbage train approaches Wishram on BNSF's Fallbridge subdivision, which runs between Portland and Pasco, Washington. The empty garbage containers were picked up at the nearby Roosevelt landfill and are on their way to Vancouver or Seattle. An older EMD GP38-2 leads two SD40-2s on the point of this train, a classic sight and sound that'll soon be gone forever. An eastbound UPK line double-stack train races under the I-84 overpass at Oregon Truck Junction. Track speed is 70 miles per hour as the UP passes under the BNSF. We began our program near Oregon Truck Junction in Chemult, where the BNSF diverts off the UP. The line leading up to that signal is the northern connection between the two railroads. Oregon Truck Junction appears at milepost 94.9 on UP's Portland subdivision. The UP parallels Interstate 84 through the gorge between Portland and Hinkle. UP 4450 comes out onto the main at OT Junction with a westbound local. Although this train is actually coming out of the siding and not off the trunk, we include it as an example of where the UP detour trains would get back onto home rails. This scene is from February of 2012. UP 2312 is an SD60M Triclops. A nice catch this morning. Returning to the summer of 2008, the train we have been waiting for arrives at Fallbridge. and comes to a stop for a crew change. The outbound crew hasn't been called yet, so the train will be tied down for a short while. In the meantime, BNSF 731 East leads an empty grain train past the waiting EV bar. The 731 was delivered to BNSF in July of 1997 and is one of approximately 120 GEs delivered post-merger in war bonnet livery with BNSF lettering. The third unit is an SD60M built around 1990 and still wearing Burlington Northern's Cascade Green. The train makes good time as it rolls past the ancient basalt flows on the Columbia's north bank. After the train passes, we notice something is going on with the drawbridge. An alarm is sounding, and the down arrow is now flashing. Good news! We speed up the camera to show the bridge being lowered. The drawbridge is controlled by automatic interlocking with authority granted by a bridge tender in Pasco, Washington. An inspector checks the bridge to make sure everything is in place before the train crosses. Now, don't expect a fast run-by here. Trains are restricted to 10 miles per hour as they cross the Columbia River. Here's a view of the drawbridge from the Washington side. We are looking down into Wishram Yard. Originally called Fallbridge, the name was changed to Wishram to honor a local Indian tribe. However, the subdivision that runs between Pasco and Vancouver retains the original Fallbridge name. A rail grinder is tied down, as well as a westbound train. At the east end of Wishram, the main line disappears into Tunnel 12 as it continues toward Pasco. Besides being a junction for Inside Gateway traffic out of California, Wishram is also a stop for Amtrak's Empire Builder.
My kid, I'd grab.
The eastbound number 28 pauses for a few minutes before continuing to Spokane. The conductor makes sure everyone is back on board, and soon the train continues eastward. A lone P-42B is in charge of the Portland segment of the builder. The other half of this train departs from Seattle. Once at Spokane, the two trains will become Amtrak 8, with Chicago as its eastern destination. Just west of Wishram is Fallbridge Junction. A river barge loaded with grain and scrapped cars heads west. But even scrap metal can look good on an evening like this. A grain shuttle slowly heads west. It is running 2x2 with a pair of DP helpers on the rear. This is a standard configuration for loaded grain trains. Soon we find out why the westbound was traveling so slowly. It was meeting an eastbound with empties. BNSF is one of the largest grain hauling railroads in America. In 2006 alone, the railroad hauled over 972,000 carloads of agricultural goods, nearly half of which were corn and wheat. Cars loaded with grain head west for export, while empties return east. In the last minutes of daylight, a northbound Barstow to Vancouver train appears at Sea Lilo and slows to 10 miles per hour as it prepares to cross the river. For the crew of this train, the trip over the Oregon Trunk Subdivision is almost over. Since the switch is already lined for westward movement, the train continues off the bridge. And eastbound UP highballs Oregon Trunk Junction. Sandwiched between the two big SD70 ACEs is UPY number 1302, an EMD MP15 switch engine built in 1974. The 1,500 horsepower unit looks a little out of place between the two big 4,300 horsepower road engines. The sun has set on the Washington side of the Columbia as the MBAR VAW slowly crawls over the drawbridge. Having completed its journey up the Oregon Trunk Subdivision, the train comes to a stop. A fresh crew will take it on to its destination in Vancouver, Washington, a little over 100 miles to the west. Mount Hood looks silently on in the gathering darkness. The Vancouver train is long on its way westward. The drawbridge is again lifted, and the channel is open for barges in the night. It is a peaceful scene at Wishram, and the end of our journey along BNSF Railway's Oregon Trunk Subdivision. We hope you have enjoyed your tour of this amazingly scenic and historic line. And as always, until next time, thanks for watching.